She was just an army cook on Christmas Eve, until a distress call sent her to save an ambushed squad. Snow drifted across the dark valley like falling ash, and somewhere out there, 6 young soldiers were fighting for their lives. No backup, no visibility, no time. And on Christmas Eve, in a quiet mess hall lit by trembling yellow bulbs, the only person who heard their fear was a cook who once swore she'd never fight again. The mess hall always felt warmer than the rest of the base, but on that Christmas Eve it felt almost sacred. Soft lights hung unevenly over metal rafters. A small radio played an old holiday song, the kind people heard as kids, before war and distance and duty stole Christmas from them. Staff Sergeant Lena Hartley stirred a pot of stew, steam rising around her like a quiet fog. She hummed under her breath, the tune broken in places, like someone trying to remember a melody that once meant something. She was 34, yet her eyes held a tiredness older than that, the kind earned by leaving parts of yourself behind in places nobody visits twice. Private Mason, barely old enough to grow a proper beard, leaned on the counter, inhaling the smell like it was oxygen. "Ma'am, I swear your food keeps this place alive." Lena smiled, the gentle kind that hid more than it revealed. "It's just stew, Mason." "Nah," he said, shaking his head. "It's home, home." A word Lena hadn't used in years. She wiped her hands on a towel, her wrist brushing the thin scar she usually kept hidden under her sleeve. Most soldiers here knew nothing about it, or about who she had been before she traded a rifle for a ladle, before she walked away from a life defined by precision, fear, and shadows that clung to her dream. Commander Rourke stepped in, stomping snow from his boots. His eyes lingered on her just a moment too long, not with affection but with recognition, with knowing. And Lena looked away, because some pasts weren't simply memories. Some pasts waited, quietly, patiently, for the moment they'd be needed again. By late evening, the base settled into that familiar rhythm, boots shuffling on gravel, radio chatter drifting through thin walls, distant laughter from homesick soldiers trying to fill silence with bad jokes, the kind of night where everyone tried to pretend this wasn't a war zone. Lena cleaned her station the way she did everything, with exact steps, steady movements, and attention that seemed too sharp for someone supposedly retired from real combat. She needed dough for morning rolls, fingers pressing rhythmically, like muscle memory guiding her more than thought. Corporal Diaz walked in holding an empty thermos. "Squad Echo 4 is gearing up," he said. "They're hoping you've got coffee for the road." "Always." She filled the thermos, added sugar packets, handed it back. Diaz grinned. "You spoil us. Someone has to." But when he left, Lena lingered in the doorway, watching the squad assemble near the armory. Helmets clipped, rifles slung, boots crunching frost. She scanned them instinctively, reading their posture, their gear setup, their formation habits. Old habits, old eyes. 3 years ago, she could have predicted their survival chances by how they moved. 3 years ago, she had a different name. A name whispered in briefing rooms by people who never met her. A name once painted quietly on the inside of a covert helicopter. Hawkeye Blue. She hadn't heard it out loud since the day she walked away. Since that final mission that still crept into her sleep, cold and merciless. She went back to kneading dough, forcing her mind blank. But sometimes silence was louder than any gunshot. And tonight, under these gentle yellow lights and drifting snow, Lena felt something she hadn't felt in years. A warning, a tremor, a sense that peace was only pretending. It happened suddenly, so sharply it sliced through the calm like a blade. The radio mounted on the kitchen wall gave a sputter, a crackle, and then a voice tore through the mess hall, raw with terror. "Command, this is Echo 4. We were taking heavy fire, multiple injuries, requesting immediate backup. Coordinate static swallowed the rest. Gunfire followed, not the distant kind, the close, desperate kind." The ladle slipped from Lena's hand and clattered onto the floor. She took one step toward the radio, then another, heart pounding so hard it felt like something breaking loose inside her chest. Commander Rourke's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. "All units to alert. Echo 4 is pinned down Northeast Ridge. QRF is mobilizing." Boots thundered across the base. Soldiers scrambling, shouting orders, grabbing gear. Lena stood frozen in the middle of the mess hall, flour on her hands, stew boiling behind her, Christmas lights blinking softly above her like nothing had changed. But everything had. She drifted out into the cold night, pulled by instinct more than choice. The command center door stood open, maps laid out, officers circling around them like a storm. "The QRF is 40 minutes out," Rook barked. "They don't have 40 minutes," another officer replied. "They're boxed in, high ground on all sides. They're sitting ducks." Lena studied the map from the doorway. Her breath caught. She knew that ridge. She had memorized its angles 3 winters ago when a different mission nearly ended her. Echo 4 wasn't just in trouble, they were trapped. Classic V-shaped ambush. No visibility, no exit route, unless someone created one. Rook glanced toward the door, toward her, and something flickered in his expression. Not hope, not yet, just fear, because he knew exactly what she was calculating, and he knew what it meant if she decided to move. Lena stepped back from the command center before anyone noticed her. The cold bit at her skin as if trying to wake her into action or warn her away. Snow crunched under her boots as she crossed the compound toward her quarters, the noise of shouting soldiers fading behind her. Inside her small room, darkness greeted her, not peaceful darkness, the kind that holds memories. She closed the door softly and leaned against it, eyes shut. Echo 4's frantic voices still echoed in her mind. Young Mason's laugh from earlier replayed with painful clarity. His squad was out there, trapped, counting seconds, not minutes. Her hands trembled as she walked to the back of the room. A metal storage trunk sat tucked beneath her bunk, the one she hadn't touched in 8 months. Dust clung to the edges. Silence pressed in on her from all sides. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she knelt. Her fingers hesitated over the lock. 1 second, 2, 3. Then muscle memory overpowered doubt. Click. The lid creaked open, revealing the life she had buried. Her M24 SXR precision rifle ***, custom modified years before. A folded ghillie veil, laser rangefinder. Notes scribbled in shorthand only she understood. And her gloves, dark leather, molded to her hands from years of use. The sight hit her like a punch. This wasn't just equipment. This was the version of herself she had tried so hard to kill. A shadow that once protected people but also haunted her and cost her things she never spoke about. Lena picked up the gloves and pressed them to her chest for a breath she didn't want to take. "Not again," she whispered. But outside, gunfire cracked through the night, far away, desperate, dying. And the truth settled onto her shoulders like old weight. It didn't matter what she wanted. They needed Hawkeye Blue * tonight. She moved quickly, not with panic, but with the terrifying calm of someone who had crossed this threshold before. Lena stripped off her apron, pulled on her tactical base layer, secured her vest, then checked each magazine with precise, practiced motion. Every click felt like betrayal and necessity all at once. She packed only what mattered, 2 boxes of 308 rounds, thermal monocular, her reinforced knee pads, hydration pouch, the folded ghillie veil she once swore she'd burn. When she slung the rifle over her shoulder, the weight settled onto her back like an old ghost whispering, "You never left." A soft knock startled her. Sergeant Tully, broad-shouldered, always kind, always curious, stepped inside without waiting for permission. His eyes dropped to the rifle case immediately. "Lena," he breathed, "tell me you're not doing what I think you're doing." She didn't answer. She pulled her hair into a tight braid instead, jaw set, eyes cold. Tully stepped forward, voice cracking. "The commander gave strict orders. No solo ops. The QRF is coming. They'll be too late." "You can't know that." She met his eyes. "I do know, because I've been in that valley. Because I've watched squads die in under 20 minutes in terrain half as bad." The silence between them felt heavier than any weapon. "You were out," he whispered. "You fought your way out of that life." "I know. Then why go back?" Her voice barely rose above a breath. "Because 6 kids are praying someone will." Tully swallowed hard. "Rook will court-martial you." "He can." She stepped past him, boots steady on the frozen ground. The night swallowed her whole. She didn't look back, because once she stepped past that gate, Lena Hartley, the cook, was gone. And Hawkeye Blue was the one walking into the dark. The cold hit her the moment she stepped beyond the outer gate, a sharp, biting kind that scraped at her lungs. But Lena welcomed it. At least pain kept her awake. Focused, human. She moved quickly through the tree line, boots gliding over snow with a precision honed long before she ever touched a ladle. The base lights faded behind her until they were only a distant glow swallowed by dense pine. Out here, darkness wasn't just the absence of light. It was something alive, pressing close, listening, waiting. The wind cut from the northwest, carrying flakes that stung her cheeks. She tucked her chin down, adjusting her breathing to a steady rhythm. 2 miles to the ridge, 20 minutes if she pushed. Branches snapped in the distance. Not loudly, but enough for her to react. She dropped to one knee, rifle sliding off her shoulder in a single fluid motion. Breath slowed, pulse evened out, eyes scanned the terrain. A deer bolted from behind a fallen log, hooves scattering frost. Lena exhaled, tension draining but not disappearing. It wouldn't be the last noise she'd hear tonight. Far ahead, faint flashes lit the horizon, muzzle fire reflecting off low clouds. Her stomach twisted. Echo 4 was still alive. For now, she checked her watch, 18 minutes since the distress call. In an ambush like that, every minute was a gamble. She'd seen squads fall apart in half this time. Her legs carried her faster, almost gliding over the uneven earth. Each stride brought back instincts she despised, heightened awareness, calculations of angles and distance, that familiar, terrible calm. "Hawkeye Blue," she muttered under her breath. Just this once. The forest didn't respond, but the wind seemed to push her onward. As if it knew she wasn't running to asterisk something. She was running to stop something from ending. At 900 meters from the ridge, the forest thinned into rocky terrain, jagged outcrops, dead branches, and patches of ice reflecting the moonless sky. Lena shifted gears internally, slipping from movement into stealth without even thinking. This was where the enemy's outer security would be. She lowered herself to the ground, crawling forward on elbows and knees, letting the gilly veil spill over her like a shroud. Snow clung to the fabric, turning her into another lump of frozen earth. Every movement became calculated, deliberate, painfully slow. A voice carried on the wind, foreign, sharp, close. She froze. 2 silhouettes appeared between the trees, weapons slung casually but ready. Enemy scouts. One smoked a cigarette, its ember glowing like a tiny red eye in the dark. They laughed, unaware of the woman lying less than 15 feet from them, heart steady as stone. Lena didn't reach for her rifle. One shot would echo through the valley. It would give her away too soon. Instead, she became stillness itself. The scouts lingered, speaking in low tones she couldn't fully catch. Minutes dragged, her fingers numbed. Snow melted against her cheek, cold water sliding down her jaw. Finally, they moved on. Lena waited 30 more seconds, old habits, before inching forward again, threading herself through the terrain like smoke slipping between cracks. At the top of a small rise, she lifted her monocular. Through the thermal view, heat signatures bloomed across the ridge like scattered embers. At least 20 asterisk, maybe more. Positioned high, rifles braced, firing downward into a narrow valley. Below them, pinned behind dead logs and broken rocks, Echo 4 asterisk huddled in desperation. Mason was there. She recognized his shape, crouched beside a bleeding soldier. Lena swallowed the tremor that threatened her throat. They were still fighting, still hoping, still waiting, and she was almost there. She reached the final rise, a jagged shelf overlooking the valley Echo 4 was trapped in. She slid into position behind a cluster of frostbitten boulders. The wind howled through the ridge, spraying snow across her rifle as she assembled it with the quiet reverence of someone handling a memory, not a weapon. Barrel locked, bolt checked, scope mounted, magazine loaded, 20 rounds, 20 chances. She extended the bipod and pressed her cheek against the cold stock. For a moment her eyes closed. She was Lena the cook anymore. She wasn't the woman hiding from her past. She was Hawkeye Blue, the sniper who saw the world through angles, wind, trajectory, and time. Her eyes opened. The valley shifted into clarity through her scope, green silhouettes in motion, flashes of muzzle fire, the rise of breath from terrified lungs. She spotted Mason again, trying to pull a wounded soldier behind cover. His movements were frantic, desperate. He looked younger than he had hours earlier when he'd joked about her stew. "Hold on," she whispered. "Just hold on, kid." Then she scanned the ridge above them. 27 hostiles, 6 in advantageous positions, 3 preparing to flank, 1 the leader giving silent hand signals, planning the final push. Her breath steadied. 1 inhale, 1 exhale. She adjusted for the crosswind, 11 knots westward. Distance, 612 meters. Elevation, 28 degrees. The world fell silent. Her finger rested on the trigger. Not shaking, not hesitant, not afraid. But right before she fired, something shifted behind her, a soft crunch in the snow, footsteps. Someone or something was coming. Her heart lurched. She wasn't alone on this ridge after all. Thank you. This helps a lot Now I will continue the same story, same tone, same pacing, same emotional temperature, same cinematic tension without breaking anything. Lena didn't move, not even a breath. The crunch in the snow behind her was too deliberate, too measured to be an animal. Whoever it was had tracked her either by accident or by skill. And skill was far more dangerous. She kept her eye glued to the scope while her other senses stretched backward like wires pulled tight. The steps were slow, calculated, stopping just short of her blind spot. A whisper cut the wind. "Don't turn." The voice was low, male, close enough that she felt the faint warmth of it against the back of her hood. Her pulse spiked, but her finger stayed poised on the trigger. Enemy, ally, something worse, a ghost from her past. The stranger continued. "If you fire now, they'll know you're here. The whole ridge will turn on you." Lena narrowed her eyes through the scope, watching the enemy commander bark orders from his vantage point. "If I don't fire," she murmured, "Echo 4 dies." A pause, a breath. Snow settled between them like falling ash. Then the man stepped into her peripheral vision, lowering himself beside her with a slow, practiced ease. He wore winter camo, but not the pattern used by their forces. His gloves were reinforced. His rifle was suppressed. Mercenary, freelance, deadly. "I'm not here to stop you," he said, scanning the ridge with his own monocular. "I'm here because the people you're about to shoot aren't the only ones hunting your team tonight." Lena's jaw clenched. "Identify yourself." He smirked, the expression brief and humorless. "Name doesn't matter. What matters is that if you take that shot without me covering you, you won't live long enough to reload." The wind roared over the ridge. "Your call, Hawkeye." She hated how he knew that name, but she hated the truth in his warning even more. Lena pulled away from the scope just enough to look at him fully, a stranger with a soldier's posture and a predator's stillness. His mask covered everything except his eyes. Cold eyes, calculating eyes, eyes that had killed. "Why are you helping Echo 4? She asked, voice flat, steady. "I'm not," he replied. "I'm helping you." He slid a compact suppressor into place with a soft metallic click. Barely audible, but unmistakably intentional. "You fire, I handle the sweep. We both get what we came for." "And what do you think I came for?" Lena asked. His gaze flicked toward Mason in the valley below, toward the wounded soldier clinging to life in the snow. "Redemption," he answered simply. The ridge became a chessboard in the dark. Every movement, every shot had consequences measured in seconds and lives. Lena's breath steamed in the freezing air, but her heartbeat was unnervingly calm. She moved each calculation through her mind like an old mantra. Wind, distance, trajectory, cover. Everything else, fear, doubt, she left behind. Below her, Echo 4 struggled to regroup. Mason pulled the injured soldier into cover, his hands slick with blood, teeth clenched against a scream that never escaped. Lena's fingers found the trigger naturally, muscles remembering the rhythm they'd learned in another life, a life she had tried to bury under flour and stew. The stranger beside her, still silent, still watching, still deadly, moved like smoke between rocks. His suppressed rifle sang in brief, quiet bursts, each shot neutralizing a threat that Lena hadn't noticed. Coordination didn't require words. It was instinct, honed by experience and necessity. An enemy commander shouted orders, gesturing frantically. Lena zoomed in through her scope. There were 5 of them grouped too close together. A perfect target. Her finger tightened on the trigger. She hesitated. For a fraction of a heartbeat, she thought of the mess hall, of Mason grinning over Coco, of Echo 4 laughing before the fight, of the warmth she had tried to believe could still exist. Then she exhaled, letting the moment pass into action. 3 shots, precise and final. The group scattered. Silence reclaimed the ridge. The stranger glanced at her, a brief nod. Lena didn't smile. She never smiled here, not yet. But inside, something shifted. Hope, a fragile, trembling ember. This wasn't just combat. This was salvation, one round at a time. The first stirrings from Echo 4 reached her ears. Hesitant movements, whispered reassurances, careful glances toward each other. They were alive. They had survived. But the enemy was still out there, regrouping, testing their resolve. Lena adjusted her scope. Crosswind steady, distance accounted for. She scanned the valley floor. Mason was moving faster now, helping his team drag the wounded toward a safer depression, sweat mixed with snow on his brow. She recognized determination, raw, unrefined, human. The stranger shifted beside her, motioning to a distant tree line. "They're circling. You can't cover everyone." She didn't need him to tell her. She knew. One flank, one open angle, one mistake, and it would all unravel. "Then we split their attention," she whispered, almost to herself. Her eyes darted across the ridge, memorizing enemy positions, timing their rotations, calculating each soldier's probable movement. Her first shot broke the cold silence, soft but lethal. The enemy faltered, another from the stranger, then another from her. Echo 4 peaked, confused but emboldened. Slowly they began to move, crawling toward the small cover she had marked with careful rounds. Minutes felt like hours. Each heartbeat was a countdown. Lena and the stranger moved in perfect synchrony, shadows in the snow, specters of vengeance and protection. Finally, the enemy retreated, scattering back toward the eastern slopes. The valley went quiet except for the ragged breaths of survivors. Mason looked up, eyes searching the ridge, relief flooding his face when he spotted Lena. She didn't wave, she didn't call down, she just stayed low, rifle ready, watching. And yet in that silence the valley seemed to exhale. A battle fought in shadows, a team saved by ghosts, and the night, for the first time, felt almost human. The snow had stopped falling, leaving the valley coated in a soft, white blanket. Echo 4 gathered slowly, still crouched behind logs and rocks, bruised, bleeding, shaken, but alive. Mason looked around, eyes wide, still searching for the unseen hand that had kept them alive. Lena watched from the ridge, breathing steady but tense. She let herself finally relax just a fraction, the weight of the past hour pressing down in a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. This was the moment she lived for, the moment when every calculation, every silent breath, every long night of training mattered. The stranger beside her stepped back into shadow. "Your team's alive. That's enough for one night," he said quietly. She didn't answer. Words weren't needed. Survival was its own language, one that required no conversation. Below, Mason's gaze finally lifted, and for a heartbeat their eyes met. He didn't know who she was, just that someone had been there, keeping them alive. Hope flickered in his young face, fragile but undeniable. She let him have it. Let him have a chance to believe in heroes again. The stranger finally spoke, softer this time. "You're leaving now?" Lena nodded. "I can't stay, not like this. They'll tell stories about what happened, and they'll never know I was here." He tilted his head. "Some things don't need recognition." She allowed herself a faint exhale. Silent, invisible, almost like a whisper to the wind, a promise kept, a duty fulfilled. And for a few moments, the valley itself seemed to hold its breath, honoring the ghosts who had walked its snow-covered ridges. Lena descended the ridge slowly, every step measured. The snow crunched beneath her boots like a soft drumbeat of memory. She carried no rifle now, only the weight of what had been necessary and what had been survived. The air was still. Stars pierced the black canvas above, cold and indifferent. She passed rocks and fallen trees, remnants of her route to the ridge, and allowed herself a glance back. Echo 4 was moving, no longer pinned, voices carrying faintly upward, laughter and relief tangled with groans of pain. She remembered the mess hall, the warmth of cocoa in young hands, the quiet kindness of a life left behind. It was strange, almost cruel, how those memories lingered when blood and snow covered the same ground. The stranger she had never questioned followed a few paces behind. Silent, watchful, guardian without a name. Finally, they reached the tree line near the base. Lena paused, looking back at the valley one last time. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a hollow ache that settled deep in her chest. She allowed herself a small smile, barely noticeable, almost private. The stranger gave a faint nod, then melted into the darkness. Lena didn't look for him. Some allies only existed for a moment, and some shadows were never meant to linger. She crossed the compound quietly. The base lights reflected off the snow like tiny stars, and for a fleeting second, it felt almost like Christmas had arrived. Lena Hartley, cook, Hawkeye Blue ghost, both lives in a single heartbeat, and tonight both had saved others. The mess hall was quiet when Lena returned. Few souls remained, and the scent of cocoa and stew lingered faintly in the air. She slipped inside, her uniform smudged with snow and grime, hands still trembling slightly from the night's tension. Private Mason spotted her first. His eyes widened. You were up there. She offered only a small nod. Words felt unnecessary. His team had survived. That was enough. He didn't ask how, didn't press. He didn't need to. In the way only the young can, he understood the miracle without knowing the calculation, the precision, the terror, the sacrifice. Lena cleaned the counters slowly, methodical and deliberate, just as she had for years. Flour on her fingers, steam rising from the pots, a quiet rhythm returning to her hand. The ghosts of the ridge had gone, leaving only memories, but her presence, her silent act, had created a ripple through the hearts of the living. Outside, the wind shifted, and a few flurries fell again. She paused at the window, letting the cold air brush her face. Somewhere, far from the ridge, the soldiers she had saved would sleep tonight, warm, alive, hopeful. She pressed a hand to the faint scar on her wrist and whispered almost to herself, "You're safe. Tonight, you're safe." Lena walked back to the oven, ladle in hand,